Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishna. Basically, this is the 81st number and the till 80th. Basically, we have discussed lots of things, and here basically we are continuing the question number four. Basically, that is basically user control. What is actually the user control is? So basically, we have told that text box equal to thousand cities, and thousand cities are basically going to manufacture four things, that is basically fruits, petrols, oils and vegetables. So that's basically designed. So the designer basically who created the text box, who created these thousand cities, they are telling that we have designed these cities which is going to produce the human needs. Like this, basically there are many cities created which are producing the lots of things, because we have to find the alternative of the natural resource, because natural resources are getting over, basically you can say, because the researcher basically are telling that if natural resources are getting over, then basically we can't die, basically, right? We can't die, right? So basically we have to find some alternative. So the alternative we have they have find, basically, that is software industry, basically. So software industry, basically, that is thousand cities equal to text box. So the text box is basically for alternative, basically. Like this, basically there are many controls, many user controls, that is basically checkbox. And this basically which I am telling, that is already done long before, basically. And lots of human needs are already generated, lots of petrols are generated, lots of oils are generated, and which is merged with the environment, and lots of galaxies are created, lots of planets are also created from this earth planet software energy data, basically. So just basically I'm just reminding basically what are the things are done, and how basically it's connected with the universe, how basically the planets are created. Each and everything basically we are going to see in this formula word only, basically. So here basically it's about the user controls, and user control says that it's each and every user controls are created physical location with physical location, that is basically the user control equal user control. One example I always take, that is basically textbox equal to thousand cities, basically. So thousand cities is taken as an example, which is going to produce four things, basically, that is vegetable, petrol, oil and fruits, basically. So the user control, basically designer who created the text box, he is telling that we are going to use this city as a text box creation, and the text box creation, basically whatever the manipulation happens in that text box, basically in front of world, basically that is a normal text box, but basically the to display this text box in the web control, basically even Microsoft, SAP, Salesforce, C++, C, Java, .NET, this all people have to pay certain money to the creator, basically who created the text box, basically. So it's a universe, basically each and every base company, basically who are using this text box, basically they are, that is a universe for each and every company, basically each and every company, basically you can say. So it's a universe, basically it's a private or which property, basically that exactly we can't say, basically, because it's a very because this basically which I am telling, that text box equal to thousand cities created, this basically nobody don't know also, basically. If anybody says that this text box is getting visible just due to that thousand cities is existing, then basically everybody will nobody will believe this, basically whatever things basically I am just telling it. So the basically Microsoft is paying the money, so that's why they know. SAP is paying the money, that's why they know. Salesforce company is paying the money, that's why they know. Java company is paying the money, that's why they know. C++ is paying the money. That's why they are paying the money in the form of subscription, and subscription are basically hidden, basically in the tax, basically you can say. So whatever money you are paying in the tax, basically, there basically tax services, basically which government gives, that is basically one of the service, that is text box equal to thousand cities, which is getting display in the Microsoft web form, basically. For example, there are 20 crore form which is getting displayed in the websites in the internet browser, basically whatever browser it is. And in that browser, basically there are 500 crore, basically text box which is getting displayed in the text box, and that is getting display. Reason is basically that the subscription amount is getting paid by the Microsoft corporation to the government in the form of tax, and the tax basically contains the hidden value, sorry, the hidden services, that is basically text box services. Like this, basically there are many services, you can say, which government is giving you, but basically they are telling that it's a secret, basically we can't tell you. It's a secret services basically, you can say. If we will tell you this whole services, then basically what is the meaning of government basically? Then what government will do if the government will tell this all the services to you? Then basically what is the value of government? So basically to keep the value of the government never display you the what is the basically services they are providing to the private people. That is basically Microsoft Corporation. So here basically it is we are talking about the user controls, which we have already discussed. And now basically the another question is basically what is human needs, and which is created from the software industry and the software energy basically. Human needs also we have already discussed basically. There are two types of human needs basically. One is natural and another one is the human created basically. So there are many cities basically which is created by naturally. By nature means the products which the items basically which is getting used, the construction material which is getting used, the water lake basically which are getting used. Nowadays basically water also can be created by from the software basically. Many less people might be knowing this, that from software industries, from the software data, you can create the water basically. You can just imagine the creation up to what level the software industry has reached. So basically Microsoft Corporation is paying the money of the subscription, and the text box is getting displayed. That is the biggest example of the achievement of the software industry and by the Microsoft Corporation, because Microsoft is saying, yeah, our text box is getting display. So that is the biggest achievement, because the text box is getting display. That is the biggest achievement basically, you can say. So rest of basically achievements are already always there basically. But the main achievement is text box is getting display. That is basically 500 crore text box is getting display in the Microsoft Corporation web form basically. So that is the biggest achievement basically, you can say. So here basically we are talking about the human needs basically. Human needs basically says that whatever there are two types of human needs. One is the basically natural and one is the human need, human created needs basically. And human creation needs basically they have the human have used the software industry basically. So from the software industry basically they are creating the human needs, which we have already discussed. So basically there are many software in this world basically which they have achieved the human needs, and they have sold lots of human needs. Like this basically a few people have created lots of apples, oranges, grapes basically. You can say grapes created from the software. So basically it's not like that the software basically if you put type grapes then it's producing grapes. It's not like that basically. There are set of processes which is happening from the softwares basically. And then basically software nuclear energies are there, nuclear companies are there. Then the software companies are sorry, the power companies are there, which basically they are producing the energies basically, you can say. Like this basically after the energy production this, from the chemical basically set of creations happens basically. Like this basically lots of creations have happened. So basically like this basically the software industry says that from the software energy basically lots of creation has happened. So basically what is the interview? What is interview basically, you can say. Interview basically means we can say one of the person this basically I have already discussed. There is one bank director who is telling that we want few bank product creator basically. So for that basically he told that we want this type of blood cells which have which the blood cells which the blood cells data basically they want, and the brain cells data they want. So they have the mapping of each and every data which they required basically. For that basically they have collected 1,000 blood cells and before interview process basically, this is I'm telling. And before they how they collected that basically, that is basically secret also basically, you can say. Like big company basically they have some secret basically. Like we see, for example, there are lots of company basically who says that they have created mosquitoes. So basically whenever they require the data basically from any person's body basically, then they use the mosquitoes. And they have many mosquitoes in the environment basically. So whenever they require the data from the any person basically, then they use that mosquito basically. So basically there are many dangerous things basically in the environment basically. Like basically we are talking about the inventory. So they have the blood cells data, they have the brain cells data basically, and like this basically they have the each and every data. So according to the data basically they just compare the data, and whatever the data is compared and whatever the data which is fetched by the system basically, that yeah, this correct, this is the this data is correct, then they basically select the candidates and they just take the interview just for official only basically, just for basically you can say just for the purpose basically whether he is the person correct person or not basically. So for that basically they are going to ask few questions basically, and then basically the answer is given, and then basically they select the person basically. So here what was the main basically, here the main was basically they have taken the person, they have taken his blood groups, blood data, then they have the brain data also. Like this basically they have compared the required blood data and the required brain data according to the data which is required. So like this basically these all are basically hidden basically you can say. This is automatically done by the computerized system basically. There are many basically big companies basically who provide this type of software basically, because the requirement is like this, because their requirement says that we require bank product creation basically people who basically are who basically read that 102 books, and according to the books which is read by that people basically their blood cells got generated, their energy got generated, their brain cells got generated. Like this basically general thing has generated, like this basically general things which is already generated, and according to that only we have collected the data for the interview basically. So basically this was about the what is the interview. Now basically what is the software company basically. Just now basically I have taken one example of the interview basically, how they are taking the interview. So that is the best example basically of the software industry, software companies, what actually the software company is. I have taken few example of the software company also, of the few software company produce the mosquitoes to just to collect the data of the few set of group basically, because they are so very powerful basically, because they can't give the blood cells, and their brain checking is also very dangerous thing basically. That's why basically they don't take the data basically. So directly they can't take, but indirectly they are taking the data like this basically. So like this basically there are many software companies who do this type of stuff basically. This also I have read it somewhere basically. So this can be right and this can't be wrong also, this can be wrong also basically you can say. But mostly basically whatever things which I have read, that is basically 99% that is correct basically. The best example is sun and moon does not exist, it's just a light effect of the distance basically, of the eye effect basically you can say. So this is the best example of the education basically you can say, because the school education says that the sun and moon exist, but in real basically when you really basically see the things basically, the real picture basically, that time basically you will just see the lights which is getting in the round shape, sometimes it's not getting in the round shape, there are the shapes are totally different. Like this basically it's a light effect, but there is no real, in real basically there is no sun and moon, it's just a light effect basically. So this is basically computer companies also basically, which they have the set of data also basically of that lights which is basically which is getting displayed in the sky. On the base of that light basically the human eye basically tells that that is a moon and that is a sun basically. So that is basically light effect basically. So there are lots of software companies basically who have the data of this all the lights and all the basically you can say effect which is getting displayed in the sky, and on the base of that basically which we see that that is sun and that is moon basically. So this is basically you can say 80th number, 81th number, and in 82 basically we are going to see rest of the answers basically. That is basically what is the software companies basically.